Hi everyone, how you doing? I hope you're well. It's interesting, this goal setting thing, isn't it? Goals generate change. A lot of people think about life as constant. I was talking to someone just the other day who said actually we get stuck in a rut, and if we don't have goals often we end up staying in that rut. In fact, he went so far as to say often the ruts that we're stuck in are actually lined with fur. They're actually rather comfortable. So goals are often what we need to get us out of that and moving onwards. Now, one of the things with goals that's interesting is that we do them all the time. We go to the supermarket, we watch a TV program, we get the kids off to school. We're constantly setting goals for ourselves all the time. We are always actually operating based on goals. Now, these aren't formal goals. We could call them informal if you like. We're actually really, really good at getting goals. We achieve the vast majority of the goals that we actually set for ourselves. And in fact, we don't even stop to imagine that we're never going to get them. It's kind of a completely out of conscious process. It's something that we just do, and we've gotten really, really good at it. In fact, I think we would have been consigned to the evolutionary dustbin if we hadn't got really quite good at setting goals. And then we have what we think of as special goals. We kind of put these extra ones up on a pedestal. We see them as something different. And usually the differentiating factor is that we think they're going to be difficult to achieve. They're actually a lot more different to life as normal. They're the goals that are actually outside of that fur-lined rut that we're perhaps traveling in. They're goals that don't seem easy. We imagine that we may not even achieve these goals, and this is what separates them out and makes them a little bit different. And then we treat them differently. And what works very well for us as an unconscious process actually starts to become a conscious process, and in that we end up starting to find a problem as we shift them into the conscious area. And then we look at the goals a bit like this picture, where they are huge goals. They're actually very difficult for us to do. Somehow it's this massive thing that we're actually unsure of. The hard goals, the tough goals, they may even be too tough for me. So there's this idea of wanting to do something that's special and different and extra, and that scares us. And actually it's our conscious thinking that often gets in the way of that. But often in order to make those, we have to set them up consciously anyway. So what really we're talking about here is a formal goal setting to get these extra goals, the ones that we think are going to be tough. So that's what we're going to talk about mostly today, because actually you already know how to do the unconscious or informal goal setting. But you're already great at the informal stuff. You're doing it all the time. So you wouldn't be listening to this webinar, in fact, if you hadn't already set and got a goal, because you're here. So you had a goal to be on it. Now, chances are you didn't set this up as some big formal thing. You didn't write it down. You didn't necessarily try and figure out, is this a well-formed outcome, and so on and so forth. But what you did do was a very simple formula that is just that. Figure out what you want to do and then do some stuff to get it. And in fact, for informal goals, this works really cool. Our subconscious does this, and it works all the time for us, or at least 99% of the time. But the more formal goals, our conscious mind gets involved. And in fact, that's where things start to go wrong for many people. So let's have a look at the first step, is actually figuring out what you want. As this quote from Mark Twain shows, that's often perhaps not quite so easy. You probably already know things like it should be stated in the positive, in other words, what you want rather than what you don't want. Most people have done some kind of goal setting or read about it, and there's lots of different formulas and things out there. The reason actually, by the way, you should set things that you want rather than what you don't want is, of course, there's that amazingly effective subconscious goal setting process we know and already have that we can use. And your unconscious or subconscious mind, it doesn't really process a negative that well. In order to think about something, for example, if I say to you, don't think of a chocolate cake, it's very difficult for you to follow that instruction without actually thinking of a chocolate cake. So the unconscious mind doesn't process negatives that well. in order to even think about, oh, I don't want to, the classic here, of course, is I want to stop smoking or I want to lose weight. Smoking and weight, they're kind of part of that process of thinking about those things. So your unconscious tends to focus on whatever it's thinking about, even though there might be a negative in front of it. Now, that and a number of other things are in a 12-step process that I posted in a blog for the IGD recently, and that will be sent out as a PDF together with the slides and things after this. So what I'm not going to do is go through that whole process here at the moment. What we will do is look at a number of other things, sort of the traps, some of the myths, some of the misconceptions around goal setting that actually make life a little more tough for people, and other things that often get in the way. So I'm going to assume that you will go back and have a look at that 12-step process. Do grab it, and that will give you the foundations. And now what we'll do is look at some of the thinking traps that people can fall into, some of the myths. So one of the myths that people often have is we think we need a cunning plan. We think we need to have all our ducks lined up in a row before you actually head into the goal setting process, or the goal getting process, like say, because there's actually two different steps there. One is to set the goal, and then the other is to get the goal. Certainly setting it well is a major part of the process, and that's really what that 12-step thing is all about. But in terms of getting your ducks lined up, this is the idea that people have. They must have it all figured out before they really get going. But think about it. The mother duck does not wait. She just starts, and the little ducklings all line up behind her. So they look like they're lined up, primarily because they're scuttling along to try and keep up. It isn't something that she sits on the side of the road and then just waits them to line up around behind her. So the secret is to start. Now notice you do this automatically with your unconscious goals, with your informal goals. We just start the process knowing that we can cope with whatever happens. We have this kind of sense within us that we are enough. And of course, as soon as we're looking at a goal where we think we might not be enough, then we start worrying about the goal. We start getting anxious. And then maybe we don't start because we're not sure what will happen next or how to proceed. We think, well, we haven't got a plan to do the whole thing, so we better not start it. So that's one of the first secrets, is just getting started. It's just taking that first step. It's a lovely quote by Dr. Martin Luther King here about just getting going. You don't have to see the whole staircase just to get going. So you don't need that cunning plan, but you do need to start. And what's interesting too is this implies a journey. As soon as you talk about a first step, you're thinking, well, chances are this will be followed by another one and another one. You're talking about a journey here. And many people have this idea that when I've completed this journey, then I will be. So in other words, they're looking at the end of the journey as kind of being the whole thing, is that when I have, I don't know, the new Mercedes, when I have that new job, when I have or have been on that holiday, when I have or when I have done this, then I will be. And it's almost certain that there's some happiness will come. In other words, why you're looking for that particular goal, chances are in some ways it's going to make you feel more fulfilled, happier, more at peace or whatever. I find that quite intriguing too, is if you ask people what they want in order to improve their own lives, they will often say something like, well, I want X or Y or Z or whatever it is. They want more stuff, effectively. And yet, if you ask them what they would want for their cherished loved ones, for the people that they care about in their life, they will say things, oh, I want them to be happy, I want them to be at peace, I want them to be fulfilled. They don't actually wish stuff on those other people, and yet they wish stuff for themselves. That's a fascinating thing, isn't it? So just think about whether and why you're actually wanting more stuff or more things. So the journey, where does that go? What happens then? I found this lovely little picture on Google Images of this little girl waiting for her journey. So the journey that you take is a big part of what it is that to me is about a goal. I like the bigger goals because that means I'm embarking on a journey, and I'm quite fascinated to see what turns up with that journey, what possibilities are opened up, because all sorts of things could happen. And to me, a goal is about the journey and the destination, not just the destination. And a lot of people forget that. They fail to understand that actually the journey can have as much juice in it as the goal itself. And who they become on that journey can be oftentimes quite an amazing thing. And in fact, often the journey is about helping people become who they need to be in order to actually get or have the goal that they want. Very often who they are now actually is at odds with getting that goal, and they as an individual will need to go through some kind of change or development process or growth process in order to be able to have and hold that goal. So that's something to be remembered about goals too, is the journey is a huge part of it. Another thing that you'll often find with the goal setting process, and some of the more formal ones out there, is never to settle for less than the goal that's there. Is change what you do, but do not change the goal. You know, grit your teeth, carry on, really go for it, and make sure that whatever you do, don't settle for less than than what you really want. Now, I'm not a real subscriber to that. Over time, we change. In fact, over the journey towards a goal, we change. Our values change. What's important to us changes. Perhaps getting one goal may make other goals redundant. So I'm much more in favor of keeping some flexibility about the final goal that you're looking for. Now, that's not about making an excuse and saying, oh, I couldn't get that goal, so I'll pretend I was going for a smaller one. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm just saying that as people, we change over time. And certainly when we get out there and put ourselves on the line for going for a goal, it's pretty certain we will be changing as we head into that process of getting that goal. So you've often got a multitude of paths, a multitude of different things, and it's almost certain as you go through those different ways, the goal itself will probably in your mind morph into something different, partly because you become more certain about what it is as you move forward, but also just because paths open up. Now, one of the things that can happen if you stay really focused on a single goal and don't let that change, you're sort of saying that even though I've changed, I still want this goal that's perhaps not me anymore. It starts to become not authentic, and that actually the unconscious mind will pick up and start fighting you on this one. So if you're kind of locked into a big goal, it's like we're refusing to allow it to morph or evolve. It locks us into a process. It locks us into the place we're at almost. And we become thinking about we are the person going for that goal as opposed to the we are the person that's growing and moving on. So I wouldn't get that fussed about getting focused on a particular goal and then locking it in stone and keeping it forever. I think that's actually quite limiting. So what we do there is we've got this idea that actually one of the reasons that people like that sort of setting a goal and sticking to it is it gives them a level of certainty. And that's fine, but also some of the juice, some of the benefits we get from a goal is the uncertainty. And there's this quote here from Tony Robbins, is that it's actually about the amount of uncertainty you can deal with or tolerate will have a big impact on how well you get through your life and the quality of the life that you can create for yourself. So uncertainty is okay. What's different about uncertainty for most people is how they deal with it. It's how you think about it that counts. It can become a blocker if you become anxious in some way in response to the uncertainty. But if you think about what anxiety is a result of you imagining things not turning out so well in the future. So if you're thinking about your goal and you're anxious about it, what's actually going is if you've got some fear of something that probably won't happen, because most of what we're anxious about never really comes to pass. So that's an easy thing to say and not so easy for those who are worriers or do anxiety really well. But it's about imagining things turning out well in the future rather than imagining things turning out badly. Now, what I'm not saying here is don't do your risk management. If there are risks to manage when you're going for a goal, absolutely do that. In other words, what could turn out badly. But then when you've done that process, turn your attention to what will actually happen and how they'll turn out well. So that's really about managing that uncertainty in a way. And in doing that too, then you get that sort of flexibility about your goal, is that you can ride with it, you can see what happens, you can enjoy the journey, you can take and grow from the journey. Now, one of the places that people do get a little more flexible than normal about their goals is the New Year's resolutions. And that's kind of why we're doing this webinar at this point in time, is the New Year is around the corner. What sort of New Year's goals are you perhaps, or resolutions are you setting for yourself? What I often see that people do is they use those words, I should. And my question always is, well, should according to who? Who says you should do that? Is it you? Is it your mother, or some voice in your head that sounds a bit like your mother, or society, or your friends? So where's the should coming from? Whenever I hear the word should, to me it's like a red flag. It's saying, well, where's that coming from? What's that about? If you say should about a goal, I would actually say don't bother. If you're saying I should go and lose weight, exercise, you can see the goals on this slide. If that's what you're saying to yourself, that's the way you're languaging it in your head, I should do this, frankly, I wouldn't bother going for it. So go back and think about, well, why do you want to do that? It needs to be genuinely about you and what you want. And again, if you go through that 12-step process in the article that you'll get, then actually you will end up dealing with that little problem, because that'll take you through a process in a way that means that it'll be fine. So another thing with New Year's resolutions that actually I find quite funny is how they're attached to a particular calendar date. If it's actually a goal that's worth going for right now, why don't you do it right now? Why not now? In fact, the failure rate for New Year's Eve resolutions is massive. I saw one article that said it's 92% within a few days. I don't know how true that is, but certainly the odds are stacked against you if you're setting New Year's Eve resolutions, so I'd probably not do that if I was you, and start doing them some other time. But do them properly. Go through the whole process, and then you will understand whether you indeed want it, whether it's your goal or perhaps somebody else's. And if people say, well, what stops New Year's Eve goals? I think a lot of it is about the commitment that people have around them. They are doing them because they think they should, and they're not actually truly committed at a personal level. So the question then becomes, well, what's actually holding you back? What are the things that are getting in the way? What are the barriers? Now, if you've done that 12-step process, you will by then have committed. Or if you haven't, then you can go back and do that process again, or you can just drop out of it and say, well, actually, that goal isn't for me, let's not bother. So, but commitment comes from things like, again, I refer back to that anxiety thing. What are you anxious about in terms of a goal? What do you fear losing? A lot of people don't end up getting goals because of the secondary gain. And by secondary gain, I mean things that are a current benefit from the status quo that you think you might lose as a result of going for the goal. So what are the consequences? In fact, there's 4 really powerful questions on step 11 in those steps to drive out what are the consequences of going for this goal. And sometimes you'll find that actually there are some quite significant consequences in getting the goal in terms of losing what you think are current benefits to your current behavior. This is what's called secondary gain. So you've got the choice of saying, well, if I'm going to lose this stuff as a result of getting the goal, how could I perhaps get these benefits in some other way? Or are these benefits really that important to me after all? And so on and so forth. So it's about seeing what those consequences are and where you go through. So that'll help you get to the point of being fully committed to the goal. And then you actually have, then from that commitment and doing the goal, then you move into the process of traveling the journey. And there are actually 2 different levels on that journey. One of them is the mental activity, which you've actually already started with the 12-step process, is you've started thinking about, well, what do I really want, and reaffirming that commitment and focusing on it. Now, our unconscious mind, and is well trained to do so, has this targeting mechanism. We use that all the time with our unconscious goals, so why don't we tap into that for our conscious ones? And so that targeting mechanism is something that's very deep in us and is actually very, very potent and powerful. But what we do need to do is set the coordinates for that targeting mechanism. We have to tell it where to target. We have to tell it the endpoint. Now, what's interesting about that targeting mechanism is it has quite a low attention span. So it needs to have regular updates. So you need to, on a regular basis, probably daily for a big goal, is refocus it to reset it. And part of the reason it's got a low attention span is it's being flooded every day with all the little goals, like going to the supermarket or making my lunch or getting a coffee or getting the kids off to school. And so it keeps getting all of these updates, and it will eventually, your big goal will slide down the list. So every day you've got to go back and pin it back to the top of the list. So that's why you need to go back and mentally imagine your goal in all its glory. It's about really helping set that targeting mechanism so it knows what you're going for. Now, some people say, well, okay, I've written my goal down, I can read it every day and so on. Now, actually, that's fine, but it's not enough. The reason is that the targeting mechanism that each of us has is fundamentally quite different. And it depends on how we process things. If some of us are very visual in how we see the world, then the targeting mechanism will react much better to visual representations of that goal, of it being achieved, or even more important, of the immediate aftermath of it being achieved. What happens immediately afterwards? Not just getting the goal, but what that'll mean. If we're really into our feelings, chances are it's the feelings of achieving the goal and afterwards that will be more potent and powerful as coordinates for that targeting mechanism, and so on. If you think in lists and numbers and things, then maybe a written goal or a set of bullet points and things would be a great one to read and do. But it's much more important that you figure out for yourself, well, actually, how do I operate? Am I largely visual? Will a picture get me more juiced up and buzzed about my goal, or would a description of it get me more juiced up and buzzed, and so on. So think about what you, the best way you can feed coordinates into your targeting mechanism, and then go and reset it every day, especially for a big goal. Just go and spend a minute or so somewhere quiet and just imagine in your preferred representational system, visual or otherwise, what that goal is going to be and what it's like to get it. If you're really somewhere private, you can punch the air and say, yes, got that. That's really good. So you can make those feelings come to light within yourself about that goal. So constantly remind your unconscious targeting mechanism what the target is. It's there, it works really well for the unconscious stuff, so let's use it. Now, the next thing you've got to do, the second level of activity, in addition to setting your targeting mechanism, is to start, is to take some kind of action. Some people say take massive action, which is fine, but actually just any action. And the reason for that is very simple and is summed up in this quote from William H. Murray. He was a mountaineer, and this actually came out of the expedition he wrote on the Everest expedition he did in 1951. And this is a quote from his book about that. And the commitment he made was actually to book the passage on the boat to Bombay, as it was at the time, in India. So he committed to making the journey and then started talking to people and saying what he was doing, and all of these things started to happen. What's really interesting is until you take action, Providence cannot get involved. Once you do take action, then Providence can get involved. It can join your team. And it's amazing what Providence can put in your path to help you on your way towards your goal. But you see, what you don't know is what it's going to do before it does it. So just imagine for a moment that cast iron guarantee. Tomorrow is the luckiest day of your life. What would you do? Would you sit at home? Where would you go? So you wouldn't sit at home, would you? You'd get out there and do something, hoping to tap into that luck. So it's a bit the same with goal setting, is get out there and tap into Providence. Get Providence working on your side on the pathway that you're taking. So get active. And then as you're active, be awake to the serendipity, to the things that turn up that are going to help you along the way. So, and the reason for that is there are many, many paths that you could take towards your goal. But focusing on just one path limits your options. It's kind of like you've got blinkers on. You're saying, this is the way to do it. I have my plan. I'm going to force my way and push my way through this direction and this path. And actually, there might be some much easier ones that you're completely unaware of. But if you're focused on one path, you will stay unaware of the easier ones. So just think back to things that have happened in your life. In hindsight, did you take the path you thought you'd take? It's most unlikely. Most of us end up where we are through a set of circumstances and happenstances. But having said that, you still need to have a plan. But it doesn't have to be a vast plan with all the steps. You need to plan at least the first steps. Those first steps are the ones that will nudge you along the right general direction and get you going on the pathway. And then the plan you need to hold lightly, like you'd hold a butterfly. So if you hold a butterfly too tightly or hold the plan too tightly, what you're saying is that you know best. And what will happen is you won't notice the opportunities that Providence actually puts in your path. So you're denying Providence the ability to come and bat for you on your team. And that's a silly thing to do, quite frankly, because Providence is a powerful force in your life. So keep your eye on the prize, but let go of the idea that it's all about up to you getting that prize, that Providence can help. In fact, for the bigger goals, you're never going to do it alone. It's just not going to happen that way. So you have to get other people involved in the game. So you have to do things that will allow them to come in and work and assist and help that whole process. And then part of what you need to do then is keep some idea of your progress. The reason for this is that day to day it seems like nothing much changes. And yet over the weeks or months a lot can change. So you need some little journal that might be helpful just to give you an idea that things are indeed changing. You are indeed making some progress. So it's a bit about tracking stuff. So that's really sort of covering a few key points, a few things that I think are myths, misconceptions, or traps that people fall into, and they are based on some extra thinking that layers on top of those 12 steps. So when you do get that email, have a look at those and go through. But what I can do now is have a look at some of the questions that people put in before the webinar started. There's a little bit about me if you want to get in touch, and a couple of books I've written and tips booklets that are downloadable off our website. But just here's some questions that came in. One of them is examples of how a good functional and personal objective should be written, which is really interesting. We've sort of touched on that. Is actually it's not about writing it down a certain way. A lot of goal setting says, yeah, you must write it this way. What they're trying to do is to get you thinking about things in a certain way. So if writing the goal works for you, that's absolutely fine. But your goal in that is to get to the point where you can set your targeting mechanism appropriately. So it's much more important, rather than writing it down, is that you set the objectives such that you can fire up and feed the coordinates into your targeting mechanism in the way that your targeting mechanism best operates. Now, by all means, write it down. And in fact, you might even write down things like the feelings or other stuff that's involved with feeding in those coordinates. So I'm not a great believer in there is a correct way to write a goal. I think it varies on the individual. So it's whatever you need to get the juice into it, to get it into your targeting mechanism in a way that means your unconscious can get involved, and then go out there and make a start. So that's how I would answer that question. Another one that we had come in is, what is the main reason that people do not achieve their goals once they have set them? So this is well asked in the sense that it does separate this idea of setting goals as different to getting goals. They're actually two parts of all the process, but they are different parts. Having said that, sometimes when you're out there getting a goal, you might need to recycle back and actually look at resetting it a little differently, or changing it, or working with that process again. So it is a bit iterative. So what's the main reason that people do not achieve their goals? I'm not sure there's any research on that, or even a straight answer. It depends on the individual. I would think a common one has to be commitment. And if the commitment's missing, it's because they haven't been through those 12 steps. Now, the 12 steps I've stitched together draw on all sorts of other goal-setting things, so it's not definitive in any kind of sense, but it does pull together a lot of the things that are wrapped up in things like SMART goals and so on. So rather than try and memorize this acronym and what all those different letters stand for, just get a hold of that document and run through it. With a friend as well, that's another way to do it. So commitment's often a big one. I think the other one that people is that people don't keep updating their short attention span target mechanism. I think that's often, and so the goal starts to drift. It sort of gets lost in the other stuff of life because it's not being brought back to the top of the list and pinned there all the time. Another question I got here was, I get told you can eat an elephant. Just tackle it one bite at a time. What are your tips to achieving a goal that looks too big? So quite aside from the thought of actually eating an elephant, it's about achieving a goal that looks too big. We've looked at this too, is if a goal, it might look too big to you. The question is, does it look too big to everybody? Some goals that look big to you might look easy to do to somebody else. So your perception of how big a goal is very much based on your perception. It's a very subjective view of that goal. So for you it might seem big, for somebody else it might not be. So that's the first thing to remember, is that the goal may not indeed be big, but it's just that the way you are looking at it makes it look big. Now, having said that, your perception is very much your reality in the moment, so I'm not trying to say this is not a tough goal for you. So the thing then is to look at, well, if we do have this bigger goal, what are the ways that we can do it? I mean, when William Murray started to go out to climb Everest, that was a pretty big goal, but he just started. He got going, he did things. So at achieving a big goal is run through the process and then get started. And it's amazing how things just fall into your lap almost as you go along. How can you agree, another question, how can you agree achievable goals with your line manager, especially if they have different expectations? Well, as soon as I see those words, different expectations, my immediate reaction is there's a communication gap going on. If they're expecting something different to what you think, so then you need to have that discussion of clarity about, well, what are the expectations? What is the goal? What's their expectation of what I'm there to achieve and being delegated to do? And do I understand that appropriately? Do I understand what success looks like for them? So that's about, and then I can say, well, actually, now that we have a common understanding of what success looks like, and we're looking at this particular goal, the question then becomes is, do I have what it takes? Do I have around me to support me also what it takes in order to get that goal that's being delegated to me by the line manager? So once you have clarity, then you can go back and saying, yeah, I get that, I think I understand it now, and in order to do that, I will need some extra support, I will need some extra time, I will need this, I will need that, in order to get the goal that you're setting in front of me. Is that okay with you? Can you provide these extra things for me? So I think that the first step there is definitely getting clarity of expectations. And that actually, in a sense, that's the job of the manager in order to delegate well, is to make sure there is clarity and to ensure that when they're delegating that that's in place. Now, not every manager is a great manager, so you may have to go back and say, okay, what is this really about? And in order to do that goal, maybe I need some extra time, so what do you want me to drop in order to get this goal done? What are the priorities of the different things that you're setting me? So hopefully that's a little bit about working with your line manager in terms of looking for outcomes. That's there. Next question I've got here is, what is the importance of a strong KPI suite to support and manage well-formed goals? It's interesting. KPI suite tends to push me in the idea of, now this is a bunch of numbers. These are things like how many widgets off the production line, how many calls getting answered in a call center. So normally KPIs are about numbers to hit. Now that can be motivating, but in most cases for most people, hitting a bunch of numbers is not that motivating. So I think they're important because ultimately from an organizational perspective, they will give you some performance parameters that to say whether you're meeting them or not. But in terms of an individual meeting a goal, For some individuals, actually meeting or exceeding a number will be very motivational, but for others it won't be that big a deal. However, they will get a much bigger buzz on the feelings they get if they're successful. So this is about, given those KPI, the indicators that you've got, the numbers you've got, how can you translate them into something that your targeting mechanism will be quite happy to work with? So for some people, the KPIs, they can feed them straight into their targeting mechanism. But for many, that won't be the case. They'll actually need to be thinking about, well, how can I translate these KPIs into something that will motivate me? And again, that's part of the job of the manager, is to help that translation process, to get some understanding of the different people in their team so they can couch those goals in ways that will motivate the different team members. So this is about understanding motivation. And again, that comes back to leadership. So those are all much bigger questions than we've got that we can look at today. Another question we've got here is, how do you manage barriers at your customer's end? That is, where your influence is limited at best. What I'm getting from this is the concept that we have a customer who is putting barriers up to me getting what I want when I'm serving that customer. Now, my immediate reaction there is, again, there's probably a communication gap. Does the customer know what your goals are in terms of servicing that customer? And also, shouldn't your goals be aligned to what the customer needs and what success is for them, rather than saying, well, I've got my goals and the customer's getting in the way of those? Surely it should be asking the customer, what are your goals? What are your outcomes from this relationship, whatever that is? And how can I help you with those? And oh, by the way, if along the side I can get some of my own goals achieved, so much the better. So I would get focused on success for the customer. Now, they may not be aware, of the goals that you have, so that's worth having that discussion with them. You might not be aware of the goals they have from that customer-supplier relationship, in which case that's worth a discussion. They may not be aware of how their activities are impacting what you're trying to do, so that's worth a discussion. You see, it's about open communication here. It's all about discussing and finding out what the outcomes of each party are trying to do. Now, if they're intentionally putting barriers in front of you and they do know what you're seeking, then you've got a different problem at hand. Does the customer really even want to work with you at all? So what is the customer-supplier relationship? How is that working for you? So that's just a few comments given what I can see here and on what's a fairly brief question. We had another one come in which is interesting, is how do you accomplish goals when you have no money, no support, and health conditions? How do you go out and get it? Actually, when you really don't have much in the way of, I'm guessing, resources to go and get it. And that's just what we've been talking about, is plan your goal, all of the 12-step stuff you can do on your own without any resources at all, get committed to it, and then start in whatever way you can. So start with what you've got from where you are and do the best you can from there. And if you keep doing it, Providence will get in the way. Providence will start batting on your side. It's amazing how that happens. But Providence can't come and help you if you won't help yourself. So that's always that first step. Okay, so that's that one. And we've had a couple of other questions come in here, during the thing. How do you get your peers to buy into your goals? Now, again, that's about getting clear on your own goals so that you can articulate them to other people if you need or want their help. But having said that, even if you don't think your peers can help you directly, it's still worth letting them know what you're seeking to do, because they just might know someone who can do that. Someone said to me, well, I want to lose some weight, but so how does this serendipity Providence thing help with that? I know what I've got to do. And I said, well, you just never know who you're going to meet. You might suddenly bump into someone, maybe a friend, maybe someone you don't even know yet, who's looking for a gym buddy. And okay, now you've got an excuse and a reason and someone to help you with your gym visits. Or you bump into someone completely out of the blue who knows a bit about nutrition or has a recipe for a dish that's really a favorite of yours but is heavy in calories or sugars or something, and they've found a way of cooking that dish up without all those calories and sugars and stuff in it. So you just never know what little things can come out of nowhere that can help you. So it's not about getting your peers directly lined up, but certainly enlist them in terms of having them know what you're doing, and then they will be able to help. Now here's the thing, if someone's really keen on their goal and is helping themselves, other people like to help too. But if you're kind of sitting on your hands, chances are nobody much is going to bother helping you. And I do see that a lot too, as people say, well, I've got this big goal and, I need stuff, but they're not actually doing much for themselves. Why would you bother helping someone who's not sort of helping themselves? I really don't get that one. Another question we had here is, do you agree that to step back and review on a regular basis is a must? Well, absolutely. I mean, that's this targeting mechanism that you've got, but also staying flexible and authentic to who you are as you change while you're going through the goal-setting process. So I think it's really essential that you do step back and then plan. I mean, if you had a goal to drive from here to Edinburgh, you do keep reassessing that based on things like traffic conditions. If the M1's suddenly blocked, chances are you're going to go and do something and travel a different way. So any goal you've got, you will be reassessing as you go and iterating that initial process. Most of the time, for most goals, that's just running at an unconscious level within us. But there is, I think, it's essential that you go back and look at things again, recycle that, and step back and continue to update that targeting mechanism. That's one of the real critical things. And then get out there and do things. So there's really a couple of key things, is update your targeting mechanism regularly in the way that works for you, and then just take action. And not necessarily massive action, but enough action to get providence into the game. So that's kind of me. We're out of questions here, and I think that's a pretty good time to wrap up. So all the best, and if you have any specific questions, you're welcome to email me them later. My email address is on the board. So have a wonderful time, and all the best with setting those goals and having a great journey on getting to them. Thank you very much.